Welcome to Kevin Richards VIPs. Today's guest is Shane Dennis. You will not meet a man more in touch with this community, more in touch with himself, his life, his love, and his past. This is a great guest. I'm looking forward to you learning more today about Shane Dennis. So we get to finally sit down with Shane Dennis from Unity Market. Shane, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother. I've been really excited about this interview, and I've been looking forward to this one. It's one of my favorites because I got to meet you at an event recently. And I've been to Unity Market and had some really great earthy sort of food, and it's got that groovy, feel-good vibe. But there's a reason for all that, and I got to experience why that vibe is there, because there's an energy behind it. And just like a heart, you're it, right? You're the big show here without being the big show, right? You're motivating people to be here. You're exciting, you're generous to the community, and you're awesome. And on behalf of people in Barrie, thank you for the things that you do around town. I do want to give you just a minute to say some of the things that you do around the city of Barrie, because you do get heavily involved in the community, right?
I do.
Yeah.
I guess from, sort of official things to unofficial things, I mean, out of Unity Market here, we do a weekly community cleanup. So we meet here at 2 o'clock on Sundays. We go out around the lakeshore and downtown, and we just pay it forward, plant seeds of positivity, clean up garbage off the street, interact with the community. So that's every Sunday at 2. In 2015, we did 42 community cleanups. So the winter's hit and miss, but it's a consistent thing. I also do a yearly event where I sleep outside for a week. I make a shelter out of acquired materials.
I've seen that.
And that's a fundraiser for the David Busby Street Center, and as well an awareness raiser for homelessness locally and across the globe, really. We also do all sorts of, from monthly drum circle, art night, poetry night, guitar circle. We have a weekly cipher. All these are free events for the community and to build up arts and culture, and also I mean, I do a lot of sort of unofficial programming, I guess, with the youth, mentoring them through music. I've done in the past a community album project, which was like a artist development program with youth from 15 to 25.
Very cool.
And just, the big focus on the positivity and the message of the music and, the lifestyle of what we're portraying and living. Another thing that we do, which isn't as huge right now because someone else across the street bought the property, but we have done a lot of community gardens in the past.
Love those.
And given away tons of free food and just getting different people in the community involved with growing food and, getting back to the roots, so to speak, of our food, because I'm, very passionate about a lot of different issues, from humanitarian things to, environmental activism to consciousness of what's going on with our food and food security.
That sounds great. Like I heavily get involved into whatever I can environmentally as well too. But there's something just even more environmentally. It's those seeds of positivity. I'm going to kind of back up a little bit, and I want to kind of unpack that a little bit. The seeds of positivity. What are these seeds of positivity that you're planting? It's not just going around and being good to the planet, but you find a way spiritually and emotionally to be positive and let that go. So how does that happen? Where is that inspiration coming from? Where are you finding that energy to share? Because it's a lot.
It is. It definitely, I can definitely agree with that, to try and stay on the track of positivity where, I sort of always say we live in the times of extremes where there's a lot of negativity and there's a lot of wonderful things. So, staying on that track and planting the seeds of positivity for me comes from just, when I was a young child, I was very compassionate about sort of worldly issues. I remember when I started at probably 3 or 4, I was 5 years old, finding out that there was racism in the world. And was very compassionate towards that. For me, the cleanups and it's such a simple thing to do. So, with all of the ills and whatnot of the world, it's very easy to go out and do that. And the spirit of that is, I mean, I love speaking with people. So I love it's sort of a random thing and people don't see it as
Sure.
much. And so when people come up to me and say, hey, are you guys just doing this? And I say, yeah, we're doing it for free because
So inspiring.
the world needs it. I have a saying that's sort of like action with love we haven't practiced enough
Yeah.
because we're trapped in a crutch of passing the buck. And so many of these
Yeah.
issues that we face in the world, it's like mountains can be moved, so to speak, with little efforts all over the place. And
Yeah.
so I'm just trying to be the change, and
You got to be the change you want to be in the world.
consistency is the really big thing, because there's great things that go on as far as cleanups, and cleaning up garbage is nothing new or rocket science by any means, but I think it's very impactful because it is so simple. And to me, you can sort of relate. I always say, if we don't have respect for our environment and we don't have respect for each other, then we don't have respect for ourselves, and all of those things need to be in balance with each other. And so getting into some of the ills of the world can become overwhelming, but it's like you can go out and all of these things are connected. If
Absolutely.
we're respecting our environment, then we have more respect for each other, then we have more respect for ourselves. And so
Yeah.
those go a long way. And the most beautiful thing on a weekly basis that happens is the interactions, the random,
Sure.
some people think, are you guys doing community service? And I'm like, well, we are, but not because we've done something
Yeah, we're
wrong,
not in
because
orange jumpsuits. We're doing it.
that spirit. And I do know that it's it's self-gratifying. It feels, whenever people come down to a cleanup for the first time, they're like, they do it and they're like, wow, this was so much more than cleaning up garbage.
And that's where it starts.
Absolutely.
Right? And you being a dad, I get that more now than I probably used to, because now it's about, what are my kids going to see and what are my kids going to see? Like it's got to carry, right? Because now the earth is more important to me that way, because it's not just about me walking here, it's about my kids. And you had mentioned earlier about, when you were a kid, how that, being empathetic and more compassionate. It's amazing how when you're a kid, and you get this, and I love that you get this, that you meet a black friend, you meet a gay friend, cool, you want to go play? Nowadays we get so caught up in what the media says, or social media, or the hype of, now do you have to make a statement about having a black friend? Do you have to make a statement about having a gay friend? No. And it's all love at the end of the day. And that's what you get, is we're all walking the same earth, right? We're all one race. And that's great. And so one of the things that I got to notice about you at this event that we were at was you were able to sort of give it away freely. And that's not something a lot of people can do too. So that usually comes from someplace from within, where maybe at one time you were lost. And people say, oh, well, it's okay to be a little lost for a while. You might have had that dark place. You might have had a sad time in your life. There had to be something maybe that broke your heart, or near death, or something in your life that changed everything, or sparked it to be bigger. What made it bigger than just believing in doing it and actually doing it?
Well, I think on that journey, there's been quite a few different points. I definitely went through some very challenging times personally when I was 20 years old, where I had sort of thought about ending my life and was in sort of a dark place. Then I got out of that fairly quickly, that sort of horrible mindset that a lot of people can get into.
What put you there? How did you get into that when you seemed such a positive kid?
It was a lot of things going on with actually a girlfriend at the time, that she had tried to take her life, and someone also very close to me and my family. And I was just sort of really struggling with a lot of, the dream, and coming to terms with reality of how far that is away, and just felt like in a very dark place. So that was a bit of influence. I then really started, I've always been into my music and creating and stuff, and wanting to express a message of positivity. I felt like I kind of got lost from that for a bit. But once I broke through that, it was the understanding of the positive power of influence that I could have through music. That really stirred me up to be like, okay, it's not, just figuring things out more, like how to really get it together and understanding more about the process of, say, creating an album and whatnot. Another huge landmark for me of, I guess, the physical things, because for a long time I've been creating music that I wanted it to be a positive message, identifying things that we need to identify in the world, but that are very dark, some of them, but trying to shine some light on the positive flip side of those things. So a major point for me was my arm here. I used to be a hardcore snowboarder, did like the national circuits for half pipe and stuff. But I had many injuries over the years, but I had this injury which I was sort of misdiagnosed, and then I almost died.
You almost died.
I had to call in they misdiagnosed me and said that I had a hairline fracture, and they said to come back in 10 days for a checkup. Well, I went back in 10 days. My arm was about 3 times the size. My whole side was black. I thought that I was in so much pain because I had torn the muscle and everything. Anyways, turns out the doctor sat with me, and I won't use the words that he said because I probably can't curse on TV, but he actually said, "Holy, did no one tell you need major surgery?" And they didn't even take another x-ray. They just actually looked at the one that they had first looked at. And I said no, and so then I had to wait for 2 more days to actually get surgery. I had to call in, and finally a lady answered the phone, and I said, I know this isn't your fault, but here's my story of what's happened over the last 10 days, and I'm pretty furious because you guys misdiagnosed me.
And probably scared.
Yeah, it was a pretty scary time, and I had tour planned with music. It was like my life was kind of flipped upside down. I was laid up, and anyways, went for surgery, and the doctor said after the surgery, he's like, if you didn't come in today, if you didn't call in and were insistent on having surgery, you would have died, because I had a huge blood clot that was about to dislodge. He said about the size of a toonie. So that was a huge and sort of a moment or time of being like, wow, with the setbacks, slowly recovering for that, and then being like really realizing, wow, I'm lucky to be alive, and that it's like from making a phone call and kind of being a bit of a jerk on the phone about it, as I rightfully should have been.
Absolutely.
I kind of saved my own life. Now, then 2 years later from that, I had complications where I was rushed to the hospital. At first, they told me that I had a heart attack. Then they told me that I didn't have a heart attack, and they weren't sure it was wrong, so they hooked me up to these stress tests where you run. They said, it's going to take you about 15 minutes to get up to your heart rate up to where we need to measure. And so I ran for 45 minutes, and they said, well, your heart rate still isn't up there. You have the heart of an athlete. We don't know what's wrong. Anyway, so that was another point where I was like, just like, wow, really, those moments of new understanding of how precious life is, right?
Yeah.
And from being a child and being very compassionate and from in dreams to just feelings and that feeling of doing something good and how it makes someone else feel and how it makes yourself feel, and those things began to resonate more and more. And then so with these sort of near-death experiences, putting the gratitude of having life, it really sort of pushed things in a whole different way. And so I guess, with leading to where I am today is it was very important for me, not only to, in music, I always say this, to walk the talk, right? And so with what unity is and all it entails socially, environmentally, and it's like a physical manifestation of what my music is about. And I do feel like it's very important to do that in these times where we do unfortunately see so much illusion and sort of unaccountability to what people say in entertainment. And so, I'm just really trying to be 100% me all the time through whatever.
It's amazing
I do.
how sometimes you just have to have it handed to you. Life, or the lack of maybe being able to stay alive, that moment where there's that transition from I'm about to die or could have almost died to how do I make not just me feel alive, but everybody around me. And that's part of what I believe, unity represents, what you represent. Like, you just exude this ability to have this spiritual body to everybody, right? You are in touch with people around you, and people, I think, relate to you in different ways. And it's funny because in a typical musician way, looking at you as if you were just a typical musician and not knowing all your story, you're in too good a shape to be most musicians, right? Like, they're usually kind of out of shape and they're into their thing all the time. Health is obviously important to you. I'm sure, the near-death stuff probably contributed to you wanting to be not just a better person, better health, better everything. You've got, well, not only once have you had a second chance, you've had a few chances, right? So to relay all that out to people, what is your message and how do you usually do it? Is it through music, or is it going to be through, through song? Is it, well, song being music, but is there going to be a different message? What are you doing mostly now? Poetry? What's your...
Currently, I'm heavily working on my third album. It's called I Am You and You Am I. So music, I mean, I love creations of all kind. I paint and whatnot as well. But I think, the music, I always say, is the most powerful tool. It's of influence, especially on young people. And now, as well, the old saying, actions speak louder than words. So the music is the words.
Yeah.
What I'm doing socially, within the community,
Sure.
environmentally, is the actions.
And I get that, because the energy that comes from you can actually draw back on your own energy by seeing the results of your actions, right? Being that positivity on the people around you can make you feel 10 times more charged than you were when you started, and that's cool.
Well,
right?
that of the journey of this place has kept me going, and I nicknamed this place the Inspiration Station. And the greatest thing for me is, I've busted my butt to keep this place going and keep to the integrity of what it is about. Everything's for the greater good, straight up. And so, yeah, it's definitely. It's definitely been a struggle, but what I was going to say is the greatest reward that I have is when people come in and they're inspired and they're like,
awesome.
I love this place. This has got me back into my creative side, or it's got them connected with someone that they're like, wow, I can't believe I've met this person. The amount of people that you wouldn't normally maybe meet and then have some kind of great relationship that's happened or that I've seen
Sure.
here. It's like if these walls could talk, and though I've seen so much, but that's the hugest drive for me to keep going with everything is being like, what you're doing is making a difference.
So you've got this charge, though. You're getting a charge back from the people around you, and there's sort of an interrelation charge. Mm-hmm. But sooner or later, you need to recharge. When your battery's let out, it happens. It happens to the best of everybody, right? You can give me all the positivity and whatever else in the world right now, and I love it. But there has to be a time that Shane just becomes Shane. Shane, chill out, Shane. What do you do to chill out? How do you recharge? And do you just sometimes feel like a little heavy again and just think, you know what, I need to step back? Like, how do you step back? Because you can't recharge your batteries using them.
I know. Well, that's something that I definitely struggle with. And over the course of 5 years of being here, there's definitely points where I've been super burnt out, and I am always trying to put out positivity, but then those times it becomes pretty challenging when you're like, the countless amounts of nights with no sleep, not partying, but just working on different aspects of building this place.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I recharge with is my music, right? It's just, I can sit and play for hours. The problem with that is then you're like, oh man, it's 6 a.m. and I gotta interview at 7 or gotta be up at 7 or whatever.
Wouldn't mind doing it if it wasn't for this job and having to pay bills. Yeah,
I do find like going into nature is really recharging as well. I mean, I don't, honestly, if I haven't had a vacation in 6 years.
Yeah.
But it's all, people often ask me, do you ever get any you time? And I say, well,
this kind of
I've
is you time
considered
in a
it
funny way.
all me time,
Yeah.
And because I'm very passionate and I just, it's like true love of wanting to make a positive difference. And so, those times like when people come in and they're they're grateful or they're excited and they're charged up, like that charges me up as well. So I don't get a lot of chill time because my aspirations are very high, and I'm like, really, it's been a long road thus far, but I'm like, it's just the beginning. I'm just ready now. All this has been preparing to, do things on the next level. So I guess I'm a bit of a workaholic.
That's not a bad thing.
But I mean, if you look at this place, I love to woodwork. I love to build. I love to create. I mean, this place is like a gigantic art project. So, I mean, I'm blessed and grateful to live the dream, which I also need to bust my butt to keep the dream going.
Yes, you have to fund it, and that's the hard part too sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when I listen to your music, and I listened to you the other day, you've got a message that sort of never really seems to falter. It's always a very positive message, and it's to the world. And usually I wouldn't want to do this sort of thing, but I'd love to just, if you've got something that just goes through your head, because I know you're probably one of those guys that just walks around with a song in his head and you're adjusting it all the time. If you're just going to bang something out right now, completely brand new, what's on your mind right now that you would let us hear right now?
Well, I could do a little spoken word poetry piece.
And is it inspired right now? Is it new? Newish?
It's newish. It's not a freestyle, but it's.
Well, let us have it.
I'm sure that you could sum up what this one word is that I'm talking about by the end. I hope that you can.
Yeah.
It's hard to give if you're really not receiving it. It's hard to live if you really don't believe in it. It started with the part you feel where the beating is. It's got your thoughts on the top where you needin' them. You can see it blend, the opposite of taken. Never sees an end or topples in with hatred. It's all the reasons and the thoughts that we could make it. It's all belief in that we've got to make some changes. 'Cause all this grief, it's not what we were made with. It's calling free. You should talk to it. Don't waste it. Psychology has got me talking through it. Face it. We probably have gotten lost in where the pain lives. It often seems like it's impossible to taste it. Fallen dreams like the boxes in the basement. But all it needs is you to offer it your patience. Walk into its waves. Its chakra is amazing. And its way is such a weight lift from the maze that is a matrix. It's just a page within a day that we can make it to a place of possibilities and greatness.
Awesome. That's awesome. And it's funny because there's a couple of things in there that everybody's going to relate to, and not to get cliche and talk about the Matrix, but to back it up a bit more to those boxes in the basement. Right.
A lot of people like that.
Everybody's got those boxes in the basement. Everybody's got those things that they might archive, but they might not have really looked at what they were putting away, because sometimes you always say, I'm going to put this away until I need it. Well, that's your random access memory and your ROM, right? You're kind of mixing the two. You've got to put away, but you forget to go back. And sometimes you need to go back, whether it's your roots or take a look at something, not necessarily to go back in time and redo it, but to motivate you, to sometimes remember, your values.
Remember when I was a kid and I was going to be a professional horseback rider or whatever, whatever it is for people. But yeah, that line, a lot of the stuff that I write, I try to have so that it's one line could have some, multiple meanings to it. But that one in particular, it's like everyone's, the dreams that we all have. And, that's the hugest thing for me, is to inspire people to follow their dreams, and how great people are, their greatness. It's like everyone is incredible at certain things, and some people maybe have discovered their talents or whatnot more. But it's like, those boxes in the basement, when you're the fallen dreams, like the boxes in the basement, it's like,
well, there's nothing more.
You go and open that box and you're like, man. And hopefully in those moments, it's like we always have a choice, right? We don't have a choice always of what comes at us in life, but we do always have a choice of what we're going to do from there, and how I always say our internal dialogue will take us and lead us to the journey that we've been on upon our life, you know? And for me, I guess the attitude of, there's no other way. People are like, well, what are you going to do when your music doesn't work out? What about this? What about that? You're trying to do all these unconventional things. When are you going to get a real job? Da, 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 da. And my mindset was always like, no, man, I'm positive. I'm like, whatever.
You'll make
Throw
it work.
anything at me, I'll make it work.
Yeah.
And it's interesting with that because my music career, I've put in my first album about 10 years ago now, and Unity Market has been 5 years. But it's really, it's been incredible to make this happen, and the dream of that since. And like we were talking about before, that all the people coming in that it's positively affecting their life, and working with young people and seeing them influence other people, and the ripples of inspiration go far, very far. And so I'm just one guy trying to be the best that I can
Starts
be,
with
right?
one, right?
And I always say too, there's no competition except with yourself, right?
That's what
the
it
only
should be.
competition for me is me.
There's got to be the occasional jealousy, in that, people who just might want to tell you you suck.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I can relate to that sort of stuff. People just sometimes want to knock you down.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you not get knocked down? How do you dust yourself off or never need it? What's your Teflon?
My Teflon is that I've got to know me very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to understand that a lot of times when people are negative, it's like they're reflecting themselves, the age-old saying of that. And so obviously in moments, I'm far from where I would like to be as far as always in control of my emotions and whatnot, but I've made a lot of progress. And so
Sure.
it's very challenging in times. Like, I would say I'm a very nice guy in moments when people are disrespectful, I'll be the first person to stand up and be like, hey, you gotta, that's not cool,
The world
And
needs more of
so
that.
with that, I've, my journey of learning how to approach things with love, that's forever going on where, an example, seeing, racism or something terrible, or violence towards somebody, and, there is there's part of me that is wants to jump and sort of attack that negativity, but I've learned through, it's like you can't fight fire with fire.
I've always tried to say it's not my circus, not my monkeys, right?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily up to you to fix everybody else's opinion.
Well, exactly. And that's one thing that I definitely struggle with is wanting to do all these things. I'm only one person that can only do so much, right? So the balance of that, I find it hard to say no sometimes. More and more with everything that I do, I get, people wanting my help, or they're doing a fundraiser, or they're doing this and that, or they want to do initiatives.
Sure.
And I want to help everybody, but the reality is that I only have so much time, right? And so one journey I've been on is learning, just how to prioritize for me, because my life is about being selfless.
Sure.
But sometimes to get to the higher level of being a better person to offer to the world, I need to be selfish to work on myself, right?
And that's a great message, because I think there is going to be just as much, well, not even nearly as much, there's always going to be a little negativity and kind of goofiness just from people, but you keep doing what you're doing, Shane, and people are just going to feel the same way. So I want to say thank you for today's interview. I've had a really great time learning about you a little bit more. We've only scratched the surface of Shane Dennis. And I had a really
you
great
didn't make
time.
me cry yet.
I tried. I really, you wrecked it. You're supposed to cry. No, you were fantastic. And I think that what you give from your heart and soul is what the world needs more of. And I'd like to see more of it. And I look forward to learning more about you someday. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you.
So today's guest, Shane Dennis, was able to share part of his soul with you and his incredible passion for this community. I hope you enjoyed learning more today about Shane Dennis. I'm Kevin Richards, VIP.